Good evening, everyone. It is now the spooky season, so I thought I will enlighten you with a tale from my past. I hope you enjoy, and try to think of the lesson that it may be trying to tell. It is titled The Vampire. In a certain kingdom, in a certain land, there lived an old man and his wife. They had a daughter named Marusia. In their village, it was customary to celebrate the holiday of St. Andrew. The girls would assemble in one house, bake cream puffs, make merry for a whole week or more. Once upon such occasion, the girls gathered and baked and cooked whatever was needed. At nightfall, a young man came with pipes, wines, and there were dancing and merriment. All the girls danced, but Marusia best of all. After some time, a handsome fellow entered the house, a man with a fine complexion, dressed neatly and richly. "Good evening, lovely maidens," he said. "Good evening, young man," they said. "You're welcome to join us." Straightway he drew a purse full of gold from his pocket, sent for wine, nuts, and gingerbread, and began to treat all the girls and youth. He gave enough to all. Then he danced so beautifully that it was a pleasure to even look at him. Best of all, he liked Marusia, and he did not leave her for a minute. The time came to go home. The young man said, "Marusia, come, walk with me a few steps with me." So she went out and walked with him a little. He said, "Marusia, my darling, do you want me to marry you? But you want me to take you as your wife, I will marry you gladly. But whence are you?" "From such and such place. I am a merchant's clerk." They said farewell, and went on his way. When Marusia came home, her mother asked her, "Did you have a good time, little daughter?" "Very good, mother, and I want to tell you a piece of good news. There was a fine young man there, handsome, with plenty of money, who promised to take me to wife." "Listen to me, Marusia," the mother said. "Tomorrow, when you go to the girls, take a ball of thread. When you say farewell to him, loop the thread around the button of his clothes. Quietly loosen the ball. Then you will learn from which this thread he lives." The next day, Marusia went to the party and looked along the ball for a thread. The young man came again. "Good evening, Marusia," he said. "Good evening," she replied. The merrymaking and dancing began. The young man clung to Marusia even more than the night before. He did not give her an instant. When the time came to go home, the guest said, "Marusia, walk a little way with me." She went out to the street and began to take farewell of him, and quietly slipped a loop of thread around the button in his clothes. He went his way, and she stood there loosening the ball. When it was all unrolled, she ran to find out where he had promised to live. At first the thread followed the road, then it stretched across the fences, the ditches, and led Marusia straight to the main gate of the church. Marusia tried the gate, but it was closed. She went around the church and found a ladder and put it under the window and climbed up to see what was going on inside. She peered inside. Her promised groom stood near a coffin and was eating a corpse, for a dead man was laid there out in the church. She wanted to jump quietly down from the ladder, but in her fright she stumbled and made a noise. She ran home in terror, fancying that she was pursued. When she arrived home, she was half dead herself. The next morning, her mother asked her, "Well, Marusia, did you see that young man?" "I did, mother," she answered, but she did not tell her mother all that she had seen. When evening had come, Marusia sat thoughtful, wondering whether or not to go to a party. "Go," her mother said. "Make merry while you are still young." Marusia went to the party, and the evil stranger was there. Again there were games, merriment, and dancing. The girls did not suspect anything. At the end of the evening, the evil spirit said, "Marusia, will you walk a few steps with me?" She refused to go. She was afraid. All the girls pressed her. "What's the matter with you? Are you timid? Go and say farewell to the fine young man." She had no choice but to go, putting her hope in God. As soon as they were on the street, the young man asked her, "Were you at the church last night?" "No." "Did you see what I was doing there?" "No." "Well, tomorrow your father will die." Having said this, he vanished. Marusia returned home and listless. The next morning, when she awoke, her father was dead. They wept over him and put him in a coffin. At night, the mother went to the priest, and Marusia remained home. She felt frightened and decided to join her friends. When she came, she found the evil one there. "Good evening, Marusia. Why are you so sad?" asked the girls. "How can I be married? My father has died." "Oh, poor girl!" Everyone grieved with her. So did the vampire, just though as if it was not his work. The guests began to leave. The evil youth said, "Marusia, come walk with me a few steps." She refused. The girls pressed her, saying, "Are you a little girl or a woman? Why are you afraid? Walk with him." He went out with him. In the streets, he said, "Tell me, Marusia, were you in the church?" "No." "Did you see what I was doing?" "No." "Well, tomorrow your mother will die." Having said this, he vanished. Marusia went home even sadder than before. The next morning when she awoke, her mother lay dead. All day she wept. Then the sun had begun to set. It began to grow dark, and she was afraid to stay alone, so she went to join her friends. "Good evening. What is the matter with you? You look quite pale," they said. "How can I be married? Yesterday my father died, and today my mother," Marusia said. "Poor girl, unfortunate girl." Everyone sympathized with her. The time came to go home. "Marusia, come walk with me a few steps," said the evil spirit. She went out with him. "Tell me," he asked, "were you in the church?" "No." "Did you see what I was doing?" "No." "Well, before tomorrow night, you yourself will die." Marusia spent the night with her friends. In the morning, she got up and wondered what to do. She had recalled that she had a grandmother who was very, very old and had been blind for many years. She decided to go to her grandmother and ask her for advice. She went to her grandmother. "Good day, grandmother," she said. "Good day, little granddaughter. How does God favor you? How are your father and mother?" "They are dead, grandmother." As she recounted everything that had happened to her, the old woman listened to her and said, "Ah, you poor girl, go quickly to the priest and ask him to see that when you die a hole is dug under the doorsill, and that you are carried from your house not through the door, but through that hole, and ask him also to bury you at the crossroads." Marusia went to the priest and with tears in her eyes begged him to do everything that her grandmother had told her to ask for. She returned home, bought a coffin, and laid herself in it, and died at once. The priest was called. He first buried Marusia's father and mother, then buried her. She was carried out through the hole under the door and buried on the spot where two roads met. Shortly after, the son of a boyar happened to drive by Marusia's grave, and he beheld a wonderful little flower growing on the grave, a flower such as he had never seen before. The barden said to his servant, "Go and dig up that flower with its roots. We will take it home, put it in a pot, and let it bloom in our house." They dug up the flower, took it home, and planted it in the glazed pot, and put it up by the window sill. The flower began to grow and blossom gloriously. One night the servant somehow could not sleep. He looked out of the window and saw a miracle. The flower suddenly began to sway, fall to the ground, and turned into a lovely maiden. The flower was pretty, for sure, but the maiden was still prettier. She went through the rooms, got herself food and wine, and ate and drank, struck the flower and turned into a flower again, ascended to the window and sat on the branch. The next day the servant told the Brian what the miracle that he had seen during the night. "Ah, brother, why did you not rouse me? Tonight we will both keep watch." At the stroke of 12 the flower began to stir. It flew from place to place, then it fell onto the floor. A lovely maiden appeared. She got herself food, drink, and sat down to sup. The Baron ran to her, and took her by her white hands, and led her into his room. He could not feast his eyes enough upon her beauty. In the morning he said to his father and mother, "Give me leave to marry. I have found a bride for myself." The parents gave him leave. Marusia said, "I will marry you only on one condition, that for 4 years we do not go to church." "Agreed," he said. They'd wedded, lived together 1 year, then the second, and then had a son. One day visitors came to them, and they made merry, drank, and began to boast about their wives. One said that his wife was good, the other said his wife was better. "Well, say what you will," said the host. "My wife is better than anyone's. She is good, but she's also infidel," answered the guest. "Why do you say so? She's never gone to church." The husband felt insulted by these words. The following Sunday he ordered his wife to get dressed and go to Mass. "Don't contradict me. Get ready without delay," he commanded. They made ready and went to church. The husband went in and saw nothing, but she saw the vampire sitting on the windowsill. "Aha, so you are here," he said. "Do you remember what happened so long ago? Were you in that church that night?" "No." "Did you see what I was doing there?" "No." "Well, tomorrow both your husband and your son will die." Marusia rushed straight from the church to her grandmother. The old woman gave her 1 phial of holy water and another of water of life, and instructed to do as she was to do. The next day Marusia's husband and her son died. The vampire flew to her and asked me, "Were you in the church?" "I was." "And did you see what I was doing?" "You were devouring a corpse." When she had said this, she had sprinkled him with holy water, and he turned into dust. Then she sprinkled her husband and son with the water of life, and they breathed again once more. From that day on they never knew the distress or separation, and they all lived happily ever after together. The end. So now, can anyone tell me what the moral of this story is? I'd love to see your opinions. Happy Halloween!